In the war against the Hazarian Mafia, the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States is as the Russian victory at Stalingrad was for World War II, a tide-turning victory. However, it also means the war is far from over. This is how a source who was in a secret meeting in Antarctica, on the U.S. November 8 election day described the situation. The whole election strategy changed when John Kerry went to Antarctica as ordered. He was told by the special elite, the Gnostic Illuminati, who are still in control of this planet, to tell Obama and Clinton to back off and let Trump win. As we know, Hillary is only a front for the cabal and will most likely self-terminate within a few months at the most. Bill Clinton is at the end game now. His quadruple bypass surgery is not able to pump blood through his lifeless body anymore. We are informed that he will be gone by year-end. This order to Kerry was followed by a special forces attack on a Hazarian base in Denver that successfully stopped cabal efforts to steal the U.S. election on behalf of their zombie proxy Hillary, CIA sources say. The Pentagon, for their part, say mass arrests began right after the election, but her Hillary cried a river when told to concede or she'll be arrested. President Obama was ordered to stay in D.C., finish ISIS, stop delaying the global currency reset, and meet Trump to ensure a smooth transition. In addition to this, the U.S. military is advising President-elect Donald Trump to not appoint neocons, Jews. All Jews must recuse themselves from senior government positions until it can be confirmed they are not working for the Hazarian Mafia, bankers, or Bush minions to the cabinet or White House. In addition, the Pentagon sources say Soros-funded protests have sped up the Trump plan to terminate the Bush-Clinton cabal before inauguration. The attack must continue relentlessly on all fronts until humanity is freed from Hazarian control. The Manchu occupation of China is a good analogy to how the Hazarians control the West. In Manchu China, native Chinese who passed the civil service exam were allowed to progress up the bureaucratic ladder to a certain point, but all the positions at the very top were filled by Manchus. In the West it is the same. Intelligent, hard-working technocrats can rise to positions like deputy director, but the top first, second, and often third positions in most large, powerful organizations are held by Hazarian mobsters or their proxies. The Hazarians have been removed from the Pentagon, and Gnostic Illuminati sources say FBI Director James Comey has also been confirmed to be clean, despite false WikiLeaks claims that he received funds from the Clinton Foundation. The State Department and other branches of the government must now in turn be cleansed of gangsters if the U.S. is to be freed. Also, the Trump election means the Hazarian-controlled TPP and TTIP trade deals are now dead. Trump is now poised to remove rigged corporate tribunals from NAFTA and all trade deals in a massive defeat for the Hazarian Mafia, the Pentagon sources say. The Pentagon is also planning a huge data dump about 9/11 in order to force Donald Trump to convene a 9/11 tribunal, the sources say. The New York Times will also be forced to report on 9/11 and other Hazarian crimes, they say. In Europe, meanwhile, here is how the Pentagon describes the next phase in the attack. NATO is in disarray as the military sent tons of ammo to US troops in the EU for arrests, and cabal stooges like German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande are to be replaced by nationalists. The Trump-led American Revolution expands to Europe to remove Hazarians from power. The Russians and Chinese have also now been put in charge of Interpol so that they can sweep up lower-level cabal flunkies, the Pentagon sources say. They, together with the Gnostic Illuminati, are also hunting for the master criminal George Soros. In Asia, meanwhile, the battle over the real prize, the ability to create and distribute money worldwide, has yet to be concluded. Here is what CIA sources in Asia say is happening. Mark Rutte, the Dutch PM and spokesman for King Willem-Alexander, and his mother Beatrix, the former queen, will be in Jakarta on the 23rd of this month, along with his trade mission delegates. He is coming to negotiate their claim and the recovery of their share of the Oostpoort in Jakarta and Semarang on behalf of the Netherlands, i.e. the Vatican and their patrons. We are closely monitoring the situation. In other words, the bloodline families are aiming to continue their control of the planet by laying claim to the legendary gold stashes in Asia and the right to create money that is based on these claims. As Neil Keenan points out, if they can conjure up $50 trillion out of thin air by claiming ownership of 1 million tons of gold, they can win the war and bribe, their way back into full control of the planet. The day Donald Trump's election was confirmed, the UN declared a fast-track strategy for the implementation of its sweeping 2030 agenda. This is a well-intentioned plan put forth by the bloodline families, but it is way too little too late for this planet. Under this plan, only a tiny fraction of the $50 trillion the bloodlines are plotting to create would ever reach the people who really need it. With humanity in control of its own future, i.e. in control of the process of creating and distributing money, trillions of dollars could be made available to end poverty and stop environmental destruction within a matter of months, not decades. Also, the top ranks of the UN and other cabal-created international institutions are hopelessly corrupt and incompetent. Just take for example the fact that Saudi Arabia is on the UN Human Rights Tribunal. In Saudi Arabia, if a married woman is raped by somebody other than her husband, she is punished by being buried up to the waist and then stoned to death. Saudi Arabia is not a country but rather a family-owned slave plantation. Entirely new organizations need to be set up to take over the functioning parts of existing international organizations and dismantle the corrupt and evil parts of these groupings. This is especially true for the groups like the World Health Organization, who have been involved, almost always without the rank and file being aware, in spreading bioweapons as part of a population culling plan. The White Dragon Society is monitoring the gold situation, as are the Chinese Army, the Pentagon, and other agencies. The world's financial system is not going to remain under the control of genocidal gangsters no matter what happens. The White Dragon Society is willing to broker a compromise between the benevolent bloodline families and the Gnostic Illuminati to create a win-win solution on the gold and financial system issue. The Dragon family is also on the case. The White Dragon Society expects to hear from the Rothschild and other bloodline families soon. The Gnostic Illuminati say the bloodlines would rather die than surrender and are instead planning one last big offensive aimed at retaining their control. This is likely to take the form of attempted coordinated assassinations of leaders like Trump and head of U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Joseph Dunford. However, the world's military forces have already sent clear messages to the Vatican and the bloodline families. Pentagon sources note the recent earthquakes in Italy may have convinced the Vatican not to grant conversions or provide asylum to senior Kabbalists. Remember how Tony Blair and George Bush Sr. went to meet the Pope and convert as soon as they left office? They were announcing to the world they had P2 Freemason Lodge protection and so could not be prosecuted for their war crimes in Iraq and elsewhere. Pope Francis is being advised not to repeat the mistakes of his predecessor Pope Malachi. Furthermore, the Pentagon sources say recent quakes with minimal damage in Argentina and New Zealand are warnings to the cabal. They have no place to hide. In addition, the sources say underwater bases at the Horn of Africa and the Black Sea were destroyed after General Dunford visited Turkey, plus Saudi Arabia and Russian PM Dmitry Medvedev visited Israel. In Japan, meanwhile, the Hazarian slave regime of Shinzo Abe is in a state of total panic now that their masters in the US have lost power. Sources in the Japanese underworld say that Hizo Takenaka, the former finance minister who handed control of Japan's corporations to the Hazarian mafia, has fled to his apartment in Kyoto, but that he will not be safe no matter where he goes. The same goes for all the other traitors in Japan, the Japanese underworld sources say. Right-wing sources linked to the imperial family are saying preparations are underway for a new Japanese government and a serious economic, governmental, and social overhaul. The Chinese government and establishment, for their part, were also initially shocked by Trump's election, but they are now realizing that, despite his campaign rhetoric, a Trump regime is actually more in China's interests than a Clinton regime would have been. The Chinese were advised the Hazarian mobsters behind Clinton would tell the Chinese whatever they wanted to hear, and then stab them in the back the first chance they got. In contrast, Trump advisors are already telling China the US is considering joining the Chinese-initiated Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Chinese government sources say. The US is also negotiating a deal to trade Chinese military gold stashes for hard currency. Editor's note. The link in the article can be found down in the description box.